The doorbell rang and I was at the supper table, and instead of going to answer the door, I went to the bedroom and I waited till they were gone. Especially when people know what I look like, it comes from not wanting to play the part of the fat guy in that conversation anymore. Obese people, just stop eating. Stop putting things in your mouth. You have to understand how incredibly hard that is. My experience is being overweight, obese. I keep saying overweight, and I don't think that that's a strong enough word because obesity is a word that no one wants to use. It's even a word that doctors don't want to use. If you've ever been in a doctor's appointment with me, they struggle with the term. People that are overweight, not all of them, but a lot of them have issues when it comes to portion control, when it comes to all this other stuff. And in my experience, it's not about not eating. It's about eating the right things, and also to some point pushing yourself. For example, I just got off of a 72-hour fast. So today is Thursday. I haven't eaten from Sunday at supper time to Wednesday at supper time. And that it's just something that works for me, and I believe in its health. I'm not saying that anyone else should do that, especially without doing the research on it. It's just what I'm doing and what's working for me right now. As an obese person, my view of myself is so connected to my self-esteem. There are definitely times where I assume, and when I say I assume, I actually feel like I know that other people are judging me because of the way I look. And that's human nature. I get it. It makes it incredibly difficult to go out in public sometimes, and it makes me incredibly worried about what happens with Claire and Carson. Because the things that I am, they are. So the things that I'm associated with, by no fault or choice of their own, they're associated with, and that's heavy. For lack of a better word, I got pardon the pun. I guess it's a dad joke. I hate picking up food, so if we order food, I don't like to go get it because I feel like the people that are giving me the food think that, oh, he ordered for 4 people, but it's maybe just for him. And full disclosure, that's been the case before. I'm sure that there have been times where I've eaten 4 servings of something, and that's by North American standards. So if you're in the UK watching this, that's probably 8 servings or something along those lines. People think that I'm not in control of myself, and that's really hard for me to handle because I view myself as an intelligent person. I view myself as someone that controls their own destiny. So why is this weight loss thing so difficult? There are factors at play other than just eat, don't eat, if that makes sense. So there's your body's intuition that it needs to eat, right? You get hunger pangs. You feel hungry. For me, up until recently, with the intermittent fasting and the keto, I probably hadn't felt hungry in years. So when you don't feel hungry, you really are just guessing about when you need to eat, how much you need to eat, what you need to eat, and when you're satisfied. And that is a huge thing. The portion control is one of my biggest issues. So eating till you're satisfied just was not on my mental map at all. So, and even now, I don't really notice a difference between satisfied and unsatisfied. I just feel like I should stop. But whereas before, I would feel full physically, satisfied physically, but emotionally and mentally, I guess, I wanted to keep eating. I was enjoying the food that I was eating, so 2 more pieces of pizza or 1 more beer or whatever. And I think that that's a big part of it. I absolutely hate shopping in person. There's a lot of times where I'll go into a store and hope that the biggest size that they have fits. And if it doesn't fit, I might buy it anyway. Because it's super embarrassing to say, no, sorry, this whole store has nothing for me. And this goes back to my assumptions about what other people are thinking, but being ignored by sales staff in a store it's tough to take, right? To go into a store where the people, you assume at least, the people are trained to try to sell as much as possible, and no one in the store, busy or not busy, comes and approaches you, you know? And again, it could be that they're also trained to not bother people, right? But my perception as an obese person is that that person doesn't want to help me because they know that things in the store aren't going to fit me, and they want to avoid that awkward situation. I don't blame them for that either. You know, I totally get it. You know, it's an uncomfortable thing, and it's not really something that you want to have to tell people. So in a lot of ways, they're being nice. I said that I buy things that don't fit, and because it's sometimes embarrassing. It's also because I don't know if anyone will be out there will be familiar with this, but everybody, I think obese people have goal clothing. So, you know, something that doesn't fit right now, but, you know, gosh darn it, in 6 months, I'm going to be able to wear that, you know, and I don't know how many of those goal clothing articles I've donated, because it's been 6 months, 12 months, 3 years. It just never happened. So I really want to get to the point where I don't need gold clothing because I can just fit in things from stores. That would be ideal. Another part of my experience with being obese is brain fog. So a lot of the time I feel as though that I'm creative and I have good ideas and I just simply can function on a high level day to day. But there's times where I can't remember words, you know, and they're not difficult words, they're simple words. What's another good example? I'll start with a saying or a colloquialism such as people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, but halfway through I won't remember shouldn't throw stones. It's just not in my brain at that point. And I attribute that to obesity. Another thing is I have a temper, and it doesn't come up very often, and usually it's after a lot of provocation from whatever is going on. But when it does come out, it's followed instantly by guilt and disappointment on how I've handled the situation, especially when it comes to the kids. You know, I have never done anything to them that physically, especially, or anything like that. But sometimes I'll yell, and I know that isn't exclusive to obese people and obese parents, but every time I do it, I feel like I can handle the situation better. And I attribute at least part of that to obesity. I do believe that a lot of your mood is channeled through your gut, as it were. So what you're eating, how much fat you're carrying, how much excess fat you're carrying, I think all of that comes in. And again, this is not a video to advise anybody else on health or what they should do. This is simply my experience, and I hope that it helps you guys. I want you guys to know that you're not there by yourself. And I want everyone who watches this video and who is looking to lose weight, I want to support them. I want to be able to have conversations with the people, because everybody feels stuck sometimes. I feel stuck a fair amount with weight loss, for sure. It's a day-to-day thing. I always joke with people that ask me if I've lost weight, that, as a fat person, as an obese person, we're always trying to lose weight, except for when we're eating. But it's true. It's incredibly true that fat people are always conscious of their weight, always conscious of the way they look, and always looking for ways to lose weight, but that doesn't take into account the emotional side of things, because emotional eating is a huge thing. I find that fat people, obese people, are often treated differently. They get comments. My friend that encouraged me to do this video, hi Victoria, thank you. I asked her to share some of her experiences with me, just so that I wasn't missing anything when it comes to the experience of being obese, or the reality of being obese. And she gets comments. And now here's another thing that I think I haven't touched on yet. It's more acceptable for, this is my opinion, it's more acceptable for a man to be overweight than it is for a woman. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. It doesn't make me feel any better about being overweight, but I think it makes it a lot harder for women and females that are overweight, because there's a certain stigma around how a woman should look, how a woman should act, and those stigmas don't necessarily have the corresponding stigmas when it comes to men. I might get in a lot of trouble for all of that, but that's my opinion. My friend, as well as myself, we get looks. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the gym and I feel like I'm doing good work. I'm doing the right thing, working out, or I'm lifting weights, I'm doing cardio, and I'll just, they don't say anything, so I don't know what they're actually thinking, but, stares and looks, and, people feel like it's okay to comment on this, where they would be incredibly uncomfortable commenting on race or social status or political affiliation even, right? We don't even talk to each other about who we vote, but yet, if I'm overweight and I'm obese, that's okay to talk about. And yeah, I mean, society is not ever going to be 100% fair, and I understand that. What I'm doing about it is making myself healthier and losing weight, but that's not an option for everybody as well. That's another thing that I wanted to touch on. Some people are overweight and don't have the means or the ability or the motivation or the mental health to do anything about it. I mean, a lot of obese people understand most, maybe all obese people understand the situation. It's not a question of that. They're ignoring it. They're most likely or possibly depressed. And, in a lot of ways, they're eating themselves to death. And so with that, it's tough. And the other thing I'll say is that our bodies are not the same. And what I mean by that is I can be out with my friends, and my friends will have the same amount of food and the same amount of alcohol or whatever else, and they'll be the exact same, and I will be 5-10 pounds heavier. It's not easy. It's not easy, and habits are tough to break. We assume when people are talking and laughing and looking at us and smiling and all that fun stuff, we always assume it's negative. I don't imagine they're saying that I have nice shoes. I assume that it's something about the way I look, and we assume that it's something about the way that we look as obese people. And it's always been obvious to me that I look a certain way, that people form opinions about me based on the way I look. And that's not their fault, I think that it's human nature to make assumptions because it makes it so that we don't have to think 100% about everything that's going through our brain in a day, because that would be impossible. As much as I've grown accustomed to the way that people, strangers, friends, other people, they, you can tell that they're making assumptions. It's not like we're oblivious to it. And with those assumptions, it's had a large effect on how I approach people, or don't in most cases. I try to avoid people a lot of the time because it's just hard to get over that mountain of, what are they going to think of me? What are they thinking in the back of their heads, And I feel like I'm a really social person, but it makes me want to avoid people at pretty much all costs. And I think that at the root is that I've created habits that are meant to protect me, my ego or my self-confidence, my self-esteem perhaps, to circumvent with interactions with others. And what's interesting to me is if I genuinely self-reflect on the person that I think I am and the competencies that I think that I have, I think I have a fairly healthy ego, and I might be too confident in myself. So it's tough to tell you what exactly is at stake, but it might be self-esteem because I feel as though I can depend on myself, and I would say that that's probably confidence, and I feel like I'm a pretty smart person, and I would call that ego. But as a byproduct of these habits, I've had a really hard time connecting with people or remaining connected with people, and I don't really know when that started because I always sort of loved being around people. I loved interacting and socializing, but I don't feel like I connect with people anymore. And I certainly have a hard time. I have a hard time with keeping up relationships with people that I don't see all the time. My wife and kids are exempt from all of this. I see them every day. I love them, and I hope that they feel as though I'm treating them as well as the way that I feel about them, because I love them all to bits, of course. Being overweight has stunted my emotional and social growth, I think. There's some public behaviors that I don't really understand, and part of that, I think, is self-esteem, and the other part of that is just not experiencing them. There'll be times where I'm in public or talking to someone and feel like there's something that I should be saying, but not having any idea what that is. And then second or third or fourth guessing the conversation as I play it over in my head for the rest of the day or several months. There's conversations that I play over in my head from 3 years ago, 5 years ago. And I do attribute that to being obese. Somewhere over the last 15 to 20 years, I stopped putting myself out there. I didn't want to interact with people, even though I wanted to interact with people. I started having anxiety, actually, with human interaction, especially when it wasn't expected. So I've shied away from answering the front door during Halloween, and I've made my wife do it. And I knew who was at the door. It was kids in costumes. Maybe their parents were there. It wasn't. It's not a scary situation, but the doorbell rang, and I was at the supper table. And instead of going to answer the door, I went to the bedroom, and I waited till they were gone. That's it's upsetting to say, actually. I at points have not answered the phone because even if I knew who was calling, I didn't know what they wanted, and I felt like I wasn't prepared for the call. And that, I think other people have that experience too, but it comes from, especially when people know what I look like, it comes from not wanting to play the part of the fat guy in that conversation anymore. There was a time 2 years ago or so that I avoided saying hi to someone that was an incredibly close friend in high school and elementary school. Actually, we went from I don't know what grade, maybe grade 2 or grade 3, all the way through to high school graduation together. And she was there with her husband, and I was there with my wife, and one of my good friends from high school was there with me. And my one good friend went and said hi, and I shied away to the meat counter. That really bothered me. Even that day, I went home and I don't normally talk about that kind of stuff with anybody. And that day, I said, I wish I would have gone and said hi, but I just couldn't. And that's hard. That's really hard. And I've always been really aware of the feelings that I have, the anxiety towards social interaction. What is this person thinking about me, and what is my social responsibility here, and all that fun stuff. I've always been aware that those thoughts exist, but I always thought that they were normal. As someone that's been obese or overweight at least my whole life, this just seemed like the normal stuff. This is what people deal with. Prior to losing weight, and now, because I still am obese, I feel like I'm failing people. I feel like I'm failing my family and my friends, that they'll need to deal with my issues while I'm here and after I'm gone. And I'm, the likelihood that I'll be the first one gone because I'm the obese one is high. It's almost certain. Yes, and I think that I want more time with my kids, and I want my kids to have more time with me, Tommy Tomlinson wrote an article in The Atlantic that I read last week, I think, and I thought that it was sort of brilliant, and it sort of encapsulates what it's like to be obese. He said, and I'll repeat it here if you don't mind, guys. He said, "The thing that soothes the pain, which is food, prolongs the pain. The thing that brings me back to life, food, pushes me closer to the grave." And his case is a little more extreme than mine, or was at the time that he wrote this, but the spirit is there, if that makes sense. So that is to say that when you're obese, you find comfort in food, and the food does not return the favor. So you will be down about something. Maybe something happened at work, the kids aren't listening, you're just upset that you're overweight, whatever it is. You'll find food that comforts you, and you'll eat it. If there's beer in the house and I start drinking it, I won't stop till I'm done. And does it feel good? For sure it does, but that's not necessarily the only reason I do it. It's the consumption. I enjoy the consumption, I enjoy the flavor, and therefore I just keep doing it until I can't do it anymore. And the reason that I can't do it anymore is because there's none left. And I think that I hope, please let me know, because that's been my experience with most things when it comes to consuming. And I'd like to know if you guys have the same experiences. And I'd also really like to know if that experience is shared by people that don't consider themselves fat, overweight, or obese. I consider myself all three of those things. Thank you for being a part of this. We really do appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell. Please, please, please. I understand the pain. I understand the struggle. It's not easy. But if we can help each other, it'll be easier. Oh, okay. Here's a crazy thing that I forgot to mention to you guys. I've lost almost all the weight before.